Welcome to part two of the iThrive marketing series presented by EyeCarePro. I'm EyeCarePro CEO Daniel Rostan. This part of the series is proudly supported by iDoc, ClearVision, Edge Pro, and EyeCarePro. So in the first part of this series, we delved into what type of marketing that a practice might need and what the marketing looks like. And in case you're wondering, our biggest customer base is actually the do-it-yourself, or what I'll call the non-marketing clients. 57% of our clients are actually do-it-yourself or non-marketing, either one. And I've seen an interesting trend over the years, slowly but steadily, as online marketing gets more complex and more competitive. I've seen the percentage of DIY or non-marketing percentage of clients shrink. It used to be closer to 70%. Now it's down to 57%. And as for the rest of our customer base, well, you guessed it. Most practices are at stage one, because that's where most of the practices are out there. Then, of course, less so in stage two and even less so at stage three. Although an interesting statistic for you, we're seeing very little growth in the DIY non-marketing group. But here we are in part two of the series, which is unlocking your social media potential. So I say, let's dive right into everybody's favorite topic, which is social media. Now, I fully understand how practices can get overwhelmed with social media. It feels like every minute you're being told that there's a new platform out there with hundreds of millions of people on it, and you'd have to be a fool to ignore that platform. I think we have to keep social media in perspective, or better yet, we've got to do a reality check from the practice's perspective. Unless you're going to go hire somebody to manage your social media full time, which is probably not going to happen unless you're a pretty big multi-doc, multi-location practice. And even then, I don't think there are too many practices that are going to do that. You're going to have to pick and choose the platforms that you're going to focus on. And yes, you're going to have to pretty much ignore the rest. Yep, that's right. You're going to have to just ignore the rest. Now, you're not a fool for doing so. Coca-Cola and Airbnb, they would be fools for doing so, but you're not. Let's be realistic. More often than not, choosing what to do to improve your practice is often an exercise in choosing what not to do. I can't do everything, so where should I focus my efforts? What will get me my best ROI? So when you're making decisions about your practice, you generally rely on your experience and your intuition in terms of what to do inside the practice, or maybe you belong to a few groups that have reliable input. The problem with social media is that everybody's an expert, and what's more, it's social media, so every platform is pretty darn good about making a case for how important it is. And then you start to have fear of missing out, FOMO. Should I be on that platform or not? So I'm going to share some real data with you and help you not only choose the best platforms for your practice, but then we'll tackle an actual plan on how to produce content for the practice. So don't be alarmed. There's a lot of information here, and there are a lot of platforms out there, and not many are relevant. So if I'm going to go through the slide a number of times, so you don't have to worry about absorbing the whole thing at once. So yes, if you take a look at the top, everybody knows that you have to be on Facebook. It's not a question. In fact, the more people that get on Facebook, as the saying goes, the more people that get on Facebook. That's social media for you. Now, what's more, Facebook has a lot of opportunities to target your audience, your community, promote your message. It's an effective way to grow your practice. The only problem is that it's very hard for most practices to do without significant in-house expertise. And yes, some ad revenue behind it. And that being said, every practice must use Facebook. If you're going to pick one platform, this should be it. I mean, look at the numbers. It's a huge amount of people. So let's move on. What's under Facebook? There you have it, YouTube. Yeah, you actually have to be on YouTube. However, more on, that's a tough one. I'm not going to be targeting that in another part of this series. That's a good big topic, but I'm not going to argue with why YouTube is called a social media platform either. That doesn't really matter so much to us. But what matters is the eyeballs. YouTube has at least 2 billion account holders, but keep in mind that you don't need to be an account holder to watch a YouTube video. So actually the number is much higher. While not everybody watching this series is an active Facebook user, I'm going to bet that just about everybody watches YouTube videos. So quick, how do you do YouTube? Well, very quick. Tripod. Get a good phone with a good camera. Always position it in the same place. Make sure the background is very neat and tidy. Lighting from the side. And once a week, do a recording about a minute on what you speak to your patients all day, every day about things. Write out a list, and you can cover 50 topics easily for the year. Consistency is the key for YouTube. But again, I'm not going to get into YouTube too much today. If we jump down past YouTube, we get to WhatsApp. At the moment in the US, WhatsApp is not a business tool. There are some countries in Europe and Asia where WhatsApp is a business tool. Neither is Messenger. WeChat, no, that's an interesting one. Maybe you've possibly never heard of it. So here's why you've never heard of it. Because just about every single WeChat user is in China. I mean, you can see the big red patch here on the screen. That's China. Now, ignoring the politics of it all, China does not allow Google, Facebook, or Twitter, and a few other sites for that matter in China. So you got over 1 billion people in China who now use other platforms, which become extremely popular there and often have over 1 billion people using them. This is often referred to as the Great Firewall of China. Now we finally get to Instagram. Now this is where the fun begins. You can see that it has a decent advantage over everybody below it, including TikTok. So just to remind everybody, once upon a time, Pinterest was one of those "you're crazy if you ignore it" kind of platforms. And well, now look how it compares to Instagram. Most practices should probably stop at Instagram. In fact, like I said, many practices will often just stop at Facebook. So, but if you are going to tack on another platform, I would go with Instagram. It beats every other platform below by a long shot. That being said, let's take a look at the trends. After all, like I said, Pinterest used to be it. So hold on a second. I lost my spot. It's okay. Yeah, here we go. Here are some stats for you. The first thing you'll notice is that YouTube is above Facebook, right? This is adult social media usage. So YouTube is above Facebook. Now, unlike that last chart, here it's above Facebook. That's because, as I said, you can use YouTube without an account. So this graph represents what the adults in the US say that they use. So YouTube wins. Facebook is obviously still on top, but notice that it hasn't grown so much in the last few years, which is an interesting trend. Then you've got basically just about everybody else. Now, if you look back a few years, as late as 2016, look right around here, there was not much difference among the platforms. Although in 2015, Pinterest had a lead and had the fastest growth. Then next thing you know, Instagram took over and never looked back. So Pinterest is no slouch, of course, but who would you go with? What does the future hold for either platform? It's hard to say, really, but I'm not sure that we care. People are on Instagram now, so just go get them. So now the question really is we should be asking ourselves, are all social media users created equally? So some of them have billions, some of them don't have billions. What's the difference? Now, everybody knows that some platforms are favored by younger audiences or never used by older ones. So how do our platforms actually look per age group, which is really important to the practice? Think about it from your perspective in terms of the age demographics that you target in your practice. And now take a look and see what platform you should be using. This graph is a bit complicated, I'll agree, but if you stick with me here, first we're going to focus in on the black dots. Most of the black dots are on the far right of each line. They represent 18 to 29-year-olds. And what percentage of 18 to 29-year-olds use that platform? Now, what's the most popular platform for 18 to 29-year-olds? Take a look at the 95 on the far right, YouTube. In fact, just about everybody from every age group uses it, okay, except for 65 plus, in which only half are using YouTube, but definitely looking good for YouTube. Now, what's the next most popular platform for 18 to 29-year-olds? Well, actually, they're all pretty equal. Snapchat at 65%, Instagram at 71%, Facebook at 70%. But now, if you take a look at Facebook, like YouTube, just about every age group uses it a lot. But once we leave Facebook, it becomes much harder to target anybody over 30. So what's the best platform to target 30 to 49-year-olds? Well, Instagram. What's the best platform to target 50 to 64-year-olds? Instagram. 65 plus, Instagram. So there you basically have it. Now, that's, of course, aside from Facebook. But there you have it. If you're going to add on another platform, the best one to add on is Instagram. So finally, we can put this confusion to rest with some clear stats: YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, if you only have the resources to target one platform, I would go with Facebook. It's the easiest platform to target. Most people are on it. Two platforms, I've already recommended YouTube as the second one, but then you need to create videos. If you're going to do that, go for it. But if not, which you might not, which is hard for some practices to do, I would go with Instagram. Okay. Now that we've got that sorted out, let's move on to talk about how to generate a content calendar. So we have what I'll call the 3 rules of social media posting. Now, if you want to be successful at posting, you need to make sure you stick to some rules up front. Now, we're going to create a calendar in a minute, but any calendar won't work if we don't stick to these rules. So rule number 1 is, if you want to use a social media platform, you really have to commit to posting to it. There's nothing worse than somebody looking at your Facebook page and you last posted 7 months ago. You last posted a video 5 months ago. You get the idea. Obviously, you not only need to develop a schedule, but you're going to need to post to it regularly. And most importantly, you're going to have to make it somebody's job in the office to do so, or you're going to have to get a company to post it for you. Now, we obviously do that for all of our marketing clients, but we can't be you. No matter who you hire outside, they can't be you on social media. Anybody else can keep your Facebook page respectable, keep the post there, keep your platform looking good, but we can't hit any home runs for you. We can't post how cute little Jimmy looks in his new glasses because we're not there. Only you can do that. Mind you, a steady source of outside posts means that if the practice gets busy and you can't post for 2 to 3 weeks, guess what? You're okay. We've got your back. Now, rule number 2, be interesting, educational, engaging. That's 80% of the time. And be promotional 20% of the time. So there's a skill, there's an art, there's a science to creating good social posts. The easiest way to master all this is, guess, have a young staff member post for you. They grew up with social media. It comes naturally to them. Hashtags, shares, memes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, enough said. Now, rule number 3 is you got to have realistic expectations. The more you put in, the more you get out. If you have a staff member spending some time on social media and you're boosting tons of posts, you should definitely expect new patients to be finding you that way. If you're just posting regularly and you don't have too many followers, and don't expect too much other than just keeping up a respectable presence. Listen, there are very, very few practices that I speak to that are really killing it on social media. Very few. And whenever I find such a practice, it is almost always because they have a staff member who has taken it upon themselves to make it happen. So keep that in mind, because you only have limited resources in the practice, lots to do with little time, and you have to choose wisely. And if you don't have the young staff to get it done, okay, you get a company to manage your feed for you. Now, given those rules, we get to the content calendar. I co-hosted a webinar a few months ago with Dr. Lippiatt and Dr. Smiley. And Dr. Lippiatt shared this simple but very effective approach to content posting. In order to manage their content posting schedule, they've appointed a staff volunteer, Emily, who is an avid social media user herself, to get the job done. So Dr. Lippiatt, she sets out the strategy for the messaging that the practice wants to get out. How does the practice want to be portrayed? Basically, she's laying out the practice's brand. And then Emily translates those goals into messages and into more engaging posts than, let's say, a person who doesn't use social media as much could have done. Now, Dr. Lippiatt provides the ideas and concepts, and Emily translates them into social media posts with the intent of creating engagement. And this calendar is what keeps the practice on track. Now, posts can serve different purposes. I've got the list on the left and the list on the right here. Now, you can post about, checking out the list on the left, you can post about all those things: insurance, retaining patients, funny posts. Remember, social media has to be fun, right? You got to attract new patients, testimonials, building credibility, and so on down the list. Now, when you're building your content calendar, you have to consider the rhythm of these posts, the importance of each category of posts. You got to pay attention to them all, which ones are timely and when. These posts are all about you, and you want to obviously convey what you want to convey, but what do you think the other side wants? What does your audience want? So if you take a look at the right side, these are the 6 kind of posts that they want, but it won't always line up with your goals, and I got to consider the balance. Sure, they're out there for entertainment. We know that. So your staff member has a great challenge on their hands. How can they achieve your content goals while making it entertaining for your audience? Now, often eye health and testimonials can be inspiring. So consider how to make that happen. Education, well, you want to retain and attract patients and promote products, sure. You can do that with a simple direct message, but maybe you can frame them with real educational content, which will be much more effective. Fashion and health, well, they're great conversation starters. What better product than eyewear to kick off a conversation about style or fashion? You've all seen photos of staff in the latest and greatest frames, so that's good. Connection, it's not as hard as you think. You're connecting to your community. So you should be relevant to your posts, what's going on around town, share some posts, push the practice to, do a little more with groups or organizations in town. And the connection posts will all come easily. And promotion, money talks, discount, a BOGO, a special, a small gift with purchase, you know the game. And all of a sudden you're providing the content that they want as well. So you can now better appreciate the calendar that Dr. Lippiatt's practice has put together. They have a great rhythm and a mixture of eye health, as you can see here. Look at the fashion for Friday hashtag. They've got insurance benefits, humor, products, new patients, timely posts. I don't think you need to be a social media master to come up with a relevant schedule. Just, you can use the last slide to keep you focused on the goal for your posts. You'll need a younger staff member, and then you will have to choose your platforms. Now, there's obviously way more to it than that, but Facebook posts are not the same as Instagram posts, and they're obviously not videos for YouTube. But I think with what we've shared so far, I think you're off to a great start. Now, so here are some posts from Dr. Lippiatt's practice, just to get your creative juices flowing, and I'll comment on what each kind of post is. Here's Mandy is thankful, inspiring post. You've got Hello December, an inspiring time of year for many people. Connection. Now we've got keeping you safe. There's some credibility. Staff is looking out for you. The practice is looking out for you. There's some safety. Happy Tuesday. There's a little entertainment for you with some humor. And now we've got, LASIK versus scleros. Now you're into education. I'm going to pause here for a second. Now, Dr. Smiley, who's also on that webinar, he has a lot more of a specialty practice, and is often the case with specialty practices, which I talked about in the first part of the series. There's a lot more education required. And education is the key for specialty practice, but you don't forget the fun and the entertainment, the connection, and you always have to try to educate in a more entertaining way. Take a look, concussions. I'm not sure how entertaining that is. More education. Most people have no idea how to treat their visual after concussions. And then you've got the mascot. This is a little more fun, a little more connection, the practice mascot. So now we go back. Let's recap to make sure that you've got it so far. Number one, you obviously have to choose your platform wisely. Now, I gave you all the stats that you need. You're welcome to let your personal preference affect your decision, by the way, of what platforms to pursue. If you're really good at a platform, or you have a staff member that's really good at a platform, even though it may be less popular, that's fine. Go with it. All that matters is the goal of new patients. If you feel you can pull more new patients out of a platform that you're better at, go for it. Now, number two, you're going to need somebody to get the job done. In-house or out-house. Okay, fine. Maybe that's not the right way. In-house or outsource. Be realistic in your choice and remember the pros and cons of each. So if you do it in-house, you all get busy and your social media presence suffers from a lack of attention, which is bad. But of course, if you do it in-house, you can post those great posts that nobody else can do because they're not in the practice. Now, if you only outsource, well, you lose that personal connection. You lose those great internal posts that you come up with. And sometimes the best way to go is actually with both. So this takes the pressure off your team and allows them to focus their posts on the good stuff while the marketing company takes care of the rest. And if they get busy, it's okay. Number three, no, there's no substitute for proper planning. Every practice is unique. So you've got to start with an overall strategic plan of what you want to convey online. And then you've got to meet once a month, set your schedule for the month. And don't forget to have your staff show you the posts from last month. What did they put up? Make sure that they're not only personally on that platform, you should be, but you should follow the practice so you can see what's going on. And of course, last but not least, you shouldn't get too caught up in your goals and what you want. Remember, those are real people out there on social media, and they literally have billions of other things that they can do on social media. There's no reason for them to pay attention to your practice at all, unless you give them a good reason to do so. So I would recommend that you think before you post. And now stay tuned for part 3 of the series, which is taming the Google monster with SEO. Thanks for watching, everybody. And of course, we'll see you online.